Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to close your eyes for a sec. Go back to that moment. Maybe you were, I don't know, 12 years old, sitting on the carpet in your living room. Maybe you were in college, procrastinating on a paper.
Or maybe you just watched it last week for the 10th time.
Exactly. I'm talking about the finale of Avatar, The Last Airbender.
So Sozin's Comet.
Yeah.
The end of the road.
Yes. The sky is that angry, bruised orange color. The music, those strings are swelling, doing that incredible thing that Jeremy Zuckerman does where he makes your heart feel like it's going to explode. Fire Lord Ozai, the guy who has been the boogeyman for 60 episodes, is finally down. He's stripped of his bending. He's huddled on the ground.
The comet fades, and the whole world just exhales.
It is arguably one of the most satisfying exhales in fiction.
I think so. You have the jubilation scene afterwards at the tea shop.
Yeah.
The hugging, the bad jokes, the sunset. It feels perfect.
It feels clean. That's the word I always use. It feels like a clean victory. And Aang, this little monk kid, managed to do the impossible.
He didn't compromise.
Not at all. He didn't kill the bad guy. He found a third way, this mystical energy bending, and he saved the world without losing his soul.
It's the ultimate have your cake and eat it too ending.
It really is.
And that is certainly the memory we all cherish. It is the comforting version of the story. It tells us that if your moral compass is true enough and your spirit is pure enough, the universe will bend to accommodate.
Right. You never have to get your hands dirty.
You never have to make the hard choice.
Right, but, and here is where it gets really interesting, and maybe where we ruin your childhood. What if that sense of a clean total deception?
A deception is a strong word, but perhaps we should call it a necessary illusion.
Ooh, I like that. We are diving deep today into a really heavy, fascinating analysis from the Avatar Discussions YouTube channel. The video is titled, Aang Didn't Win, He Survived. And let me tell you, when I first saw that title, I was defensive. I was like, what do you mean he didn't win? He definitely won. I saw the credit.
Of course. That's the natural reaction. It feels like a semantic game at first.
It does.
But the distinction the source makes is crucial. Winning implies the game is over. Survival implies the struggle continues.
Okay.
The thesis here is that Aang didn't win in the traditional heroes. He survived a moral trap that would have crushed almost anyone else.
A moral trap.
Exactly. And the cost of that survival, the price he paid to keep his hands clean, is a form of moral injury that he has to carry for the rest of his life.
So we're going to unpack the idea that the happy ending actually hides a pretty profound tragedy. We're talking about the difference between solving a problem and just holding it back.
It is the difference between resolution and maintenance. And once you see that distinction, you can never ever watch the finale the same way again.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to figure out what happens after the screen cuts to black. We are exploring the reality that Aang's choice didn't actually end the violence of the 100-Year War.
It just absorbed it into himself.
Wow. Okay, so where do we even start with that?
To understand it, we first have to deconstruct the situation Aang was actually in, because I think in our memory, we simplify. We really do.
Yeah, we usually call it the crossroads of destiny, right? That's the classic hero trope. You stand at the crossroads. Path A is the dark path. Path B is the light path. Choose wisely.
Precisely. In most stories, the hero faces a binary choice, right versus wrong, or easy versus hard. Luke Skywalker can join Vader or fight him. Frodo can keep the ring or destroy it.
Simple, not easy, but simple.
Exactly. But the source makes this compelling argument that Aang wasn't at a crossroads. He was in a trap.
A trap? How so?
A trilemma. He wasn't facing two choices. He was facing three mutually exclusive demands from three incredibly powerful forces. And the tragedy, the thing that makes this finale so tense, is that he couldn't satisfy one without completely betraying the others.
A trilemma. Okay, I'm with you. Let's break down these forces, because I think we usually just focus on Aang versus Ozai, but the pressure was coming from everywhere.
It was coming from the past, the present, and his own identity. Let's start with force number one. The world, or more specifically, the physical reality.
The world was pretty clear on what it wanted. I mean, look at Zuko. Look at the Earth King. Look at literally everyone Aang met on his journey. They were all screaming, please kill this guy.
And it wasn't just bloodlust, though. I think it's important to understand the context the source lays out here. This isn't just a mob wanting revenge.
Right.
The Earth Kingdom had been burning for 100 years.
Yeah.
We're talking about a century of systematic destruction, of cultural erasure, colonization.
100 years. That's 4 generations. Imagine being born into that. Your parents were born into it. Your grandparents.
Exactly. Think about the Ba Sing Se refugees. Think about Jet's village. Why did those tragedies happen? Because the Fire Nation leadership was allowed to continue. The source argues that from the perspective of the world, mercy looks a lot like negligence.
That puts it in perspective. If you're a peasant whose farm was just burned down by soldiers flying the Fire Lord's banner, and the Avatar says, I can't kill the Fire Lord because it's against my religion, you're not thinking, wow, what a noble spirit. Yeah. You're thinking, you are endangering my children. You're letting this happen again.
Precisely. To the world, resolution meant removal. History had taught them a brutal lesson. When you let tyrants live, They regroup, they escape, or their ideology survives them and inspires the next tyrant.
Look at Fire Lord Ozai. He wasn't stopped, and he wiped out the air nomads. Aslan continued his work. Now Ozai wants to finish the job. There's a clear pattern.
A clear, bloody pattern. The world viewed this as a binary state. Alive equals danger. Dead equals safety. There was no middle ground in their mind.
So that's force number one. The world says, end him to save us. An incredibly logical, pragmatic demand.
And a very heavy one.
Then we have force number two, which I always found the most chilling part of the finale. The past avatars.
This is where the cosmic duty comes. Aang is desperate. He's a kid. He goes to his past lives for wisdom. He summons Roku, Kyoshi, Kuruk, Yangchen. He's looking for a loophole.
He's looking for his parents to tell him it's okay to be nice. He wants one of them, just one, to say, you're right, Aang, there's another way.
And they really don't do that.
No, not even close. Kyoshi is basically like, I killed Chin the Conqueror, would do it again, 10-10. She's so matter-of-fact about it.
She is. But let's look at the nuance the source highlights, because it's easy to misread the past avatars as just being violent or callous.
Okay.
The source describes their voices not as cold, but as tired.
Tired. That's such a great way to put it. It's not anger, it's exhaustion.
Think about it. They have thousands of years of combined experience. They have seen empires rise and fall a dozen times over. They have seen what happens when an avatar hesitates.
They've seen this movie before, and they know how it ends if you're not decisive.
Exactly. They aren't asking Aang to be a monster. They are asking him to be a utility.
A utility? What do you mean?
A tool for balance. They understood that being the avatar means making choices that stain your soul so the world doesn't have to carry the stain itself.
That's a heavy line. Stain your soul so the world doesn't.
It is the ultimate sacrifice. We usually think of sacrifice as dying for a cause, but the past avatars are suggesting a different kind of sacrificing your purity, sacrificing your karma.
Your spiritual cleanliness.
They believe that peace without enforcement is fragile. It's a nice idea, but it's not real. If you aren't willing to be the enforcement, the peace collapses.
And it's not just Kyoshi who you expect to be hardcore.
No. Roku expresses deep regret for his own hesitation with Sozin. He says, I should have been more decisive. His failure led to this 100-year nightmare.
He's living proof of what happens when you try to be merciful to a tyrant.
Yangchen is the most heartbreaking one here. She's the air nomad avatar. Aang thinks, surely she will back me up. She gets it.
She's his last hope.
And she tells him, essentially, I experienced this too. I understand your value, but the needs of the world outweigh your own spirit. She tells him that his holiness is a luxury the world cannot afford right now, that his attachment to his own spiritual purity is, in a way, selfish when the fate of everyone else is on the line.
So you have the world demanding safety, the past avatars demanding decisiveness, and then you have force number, the one that actually matters most to Aang personally.
The air nomad cult, his spiritual identity.
This wasn't just a rule book for him, right? It wasn't like rule 4 in the air nomad handbook, do not kill. It felt deeper than that.
It was an ontology.
Ontology, big word alert. Let's unpack that.
Ontology refers to the nature of being. For the air nomads, nonviolence wasn't just a behavioral code. It was the foundation of their existence. It was how they connected to the cosmos. All life is sacred.
So to take a life is to sever oneself from that cosmic cycle, from that harmony.
Exactly. The source mentions that to them, violence wasn't a tool. It was a corruption. It wasn't, I shouldn't do this. It was, if I do this, I cease to be who I am.
And we have to remember, this isn't just Aang the air nomad. He is the last air.
Right. That adds so much pressure. This isn't a personal choice. It's a cultural one.
Yeah.
If he kills Ozai, he isn't just breaking a rule for himself. He's potentially extinguishing the spiritual flame of his entire people.
He becomes the final corruption of their legacy.
He becomes a killer. He becomes just another powerful bender using force to get what he wants. He becomes Fire Nation in philosophy, even if he wears orange robe. He proves that, in the end, their way of life couldn't survive the real world.
So look at the trap Aang is the Krunt. If he saves the world by killing Oz, he violates his culture and destroys the air nomad like eyes.
He betrays himself.
If he honors his culture and spares Ozai, he risks the entire world and ignores the wisdom of every avatar for him.
He betrays everyone else.
And if he tries to do both, he risks getting crushed. He is standing between an immovable object and an unstoppable force. There is no winning move on the board.
None. Every option is a betrayal of something sacred.
Which brings us to the salute, the Deus Ex Machina, the Lion Turtle, Energy Bend, giant light show.
The thing that magically appears at the last minute to give him a third option.
Right. Most people, myself included for a long time, look at the finale and think energy bending solved this trilemma. Oh, he found the magic button. Aang was right. Everyone else was wrong. Yay.
It's presented as an ultimate victory, a moment of true enlightenment.
But the source argues that energy bending actually made the burden heavier.
And this is the twist I love most in this analysis. This is where it gets really deep. We tend to view energy bending as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
It feels like one.
Let's look at the mechanics. What actually happens during energy bending? It's not just a switch he flipped.
Well, visually, it's terrifying. Aang grabs Ozai's forehead and chest. They glow. And there's that moment where Ozai's corrupt orange energy almost consumes Aang. His whole body flashes.
Battle of wills. The lion turtle says it. To bend another's energy, your own spirit must be unbendable. If Aang had even a flicker of corruption or doubt, Ozai's spirit would have destroyed him.
So it's an incredible feat of spiritual strength, no question.
But let's look at the result. The source argues that energy bending does not eliminate the moral dilemma. It relocates it.
Relocates it from where to where?
Think about the alternative. If Aang had killed Ozai, let's say he redirected that lightning back at him in the final moment, the problem is resolved through finality.
It's over.
Ozai is dead. The threat is zero. The burden is distributed into history. It's done. The world moves on. The debt is paid in blood.
Right. It's over. The world can begin to heal without the source of...
But with energy bent, Ozai does not die. The threat is not erased. The war ends, yes, but only because Aang personally neutralized.
Oh, I see where you're going. Ozai's still there. He's a guy in a cell now.
He is. And he is only there because Aang allows. Ozai breathes because Aang allows. Ozai wakes up every morning because Aang decided he should.
So the responsibility doesn't disappear. It just lands squarely on Aang's shoulders forever.
It transfers. Instead of the violence being resolved through a final act, Aang becomes the container for it.
He absorbs the problem.
He absorbs the responsibility for Ozai's continued existence. He effectively says, I will not kill you, which means I am now responsible for you for the rest of your life.
That's chilling. The source calls this a transfer of trauma.
It is. It reminds me of, well, it's like a nuclear waste containment. You don't get rid of the radiation, you just build a really thick wall around it, and then you have to monitor that wall for eternity.
And Aang is
the wall.
Oh.
And the guard, and the monitoring system.
Oh.
And think about what that means for him. Past avatars distributed the burden of peace across history by making brutal choices. They killed the villain. The villain died. The world reset. It was a shared historical burden.
But Aang
concentrated the entire burden solely onto himself. He is the living anchor holding the memory of that threat in place. Every day for the rest of his life, he has to live with the choice to let Ozai.
So the so what here is that the war didn't really end in the way we think. It was just paused, neutralized, monitored.
Remember, Aang can never truly walk away from it because the source of the threat is still sitting in a cell, breathing air that Aang gave. The happy ending is conditional. It's conditional on Aang's continued strength.
This leads us right into the concept of moral injury. I feel like this is a term we hear more often regarding soldiers or doctors in crisis zone, people who have to make impossible.
It's a very real psychological concept.
But applying it to a 12-year-old cartoon character makes so much sense when you frame it this way.
It fits perfectly. Moral injury is defined as the psychological distress that results from action, or the lack of them, which violates someone's core moral or ethical code.
Okay.
Or, and this is key for Aang, being in a situation where there is no clean option, where any choice you make leads to a betrayal of some deeply held value.
But Aang didn't kill, so technically he kept his code. He didn't violate the letter of the law for the air nomads, so where's the injury?
That's the insidious thing about moral injury. It's not always about breaking the rule. The source argues he still suffered the injury. Why? Because he still had to play God.
He had to decide.
He has to decide who lives and who doesn't. He reshaped the world through mercy, which sounds lovely, but it makes him responsible for any future suffering Ozai causes.
Or any suffering caused by the fact that the Fire Nation loyalists, the Ozai loyalists, know their king is still alive. As long as Ozai is alive, there is hope for the bad guys. He's a living symbol.
Exactly. He's a potential rallying cry. And every day that Ozai remains a potential threat, the weight of that potential rests on Aang. What if he escapes? What if there's a coup? What if someone tries to restore his bending?
All of that is on.
All of it. And let's talk about the loss of innocence here. We think of Aang as this beacon of light, and he is. But the source points out that he learns a hard adult lesson in that finale. Goodness isn't light. Compassion is heavy.
Mercy is exhausting. That is the phrase from the source that stuck. It's so counterintuitive. We think of mercy as a release, as a soft option.
We do, but it is a profound realization. It is easy to kill a monster and walk away. You wipe your hands. The problem is gone. But to keep a monster alive, to keep him safe, fed and contained, day after day, year after year.
That requires active, sustained effort.
It's a job that never ends. And there's another layer to this moral injury, and it's a huge one we can't forget. Survivor's guilt. We can't forget where Aang started. We must trace the guilt back to episode 1, The Boy in the Iceberg. And Aang lived while his entire culture was erased.
Every single person he knew, Unkyat, friend, all the Skyby except App, gone, wiped.
And why did they die? Because the Fire Nation, led by Sozin, wiped them out. And why did Aang survive? Because he ran away. He couldn't face his responsibility as the Avatar.
That guilt has to be the engine driving Ozai, right? It's not just an abstract philosophy, it's personal.
It's deeply personal. The source makes a fascinating connection here. Aang feels an immense crushing guilt for surviving the genocide of his people. Now, he has the perpetrator of a new genocide, Ozai, who wants to burn the Earth Kingdom in his hands.
Okay.
If he kills Ozai, he is participating in the very act of death that destroys his people. He becomes like the Fire Nation soldiers who killed his friends. He uses their tool.
But if he saves, he is saving the very thing that destroyed. He's extending grace to the embodiment of the ideology that murdered everyone he ever loved.
The irony is brutal. He places the burden of the genocide's perpetrator on his own shoulders. It is a psychological transfer. Aang remains spiritually intact. He didn't kill, but he is never, ever unburdened.
There's a quote from the source I want to read because it sums this up perfectly. Choosing not to end violence does not mean violence disappears. It means someone has to hold it.
That is the crux of the argument. Aang is holding the violence. He is the dam holding back the floodwater. The water is still there, pressing against him every single day.
And that leads to isolation. Section 4 of our outline talks about the loneliness of restraint. And this really hits me hard. I imagine the celebrations after the war. The whole world is partying.
The jubilation, yeah. The scene at the Jasmine Dragon, the music is soft, the lighting is warm. Everyone is finally safe and happy.
But Aang is in a different headspace. He has to. The world sees a savior. They see the boy who ended the war without becoming a monster. They see a miracle, a perfect hero.
They see the ideal. But Aang lives in the aftermath, not the perception. And the source argues he is profoundly alone because no one else can share this specific burden.
Not even Katara, or Zuko, or Sokka. I mean, they were right there. They fought Azula. They fought the airships. They were in the thick of it.
They fought, yes. But look at their choices and their mindset. Zuko was ready to kill his father. He knew it might be necessary. Katara, when pushed to the edge by the man who killed her mother, was capable of bloodbend. They were warriors. They accepted the logic of war.
Which is that sometimes you have to kill.
Yes, Aang did something else entirely. He rejected the logic of war. He stood in the spirit realm, looked the entire cosmos in the eye, including his own past lives who were telling him he was wrong, and said no.
That is a singular experience.
It is. Zuko can't understand that. Katara can love him and support him, but she can't understand that specific spiritual defiance. The moment belongs to Aang alone.
And I wonder about the silence. You know, late at night when the party is over and everyone's asleep, the source talks about the unspoken questions.
The whispering question. The ones that keep you up at 3 a.m. What if Ozai escapes? What if my mercy fails? What if history demanded blood and I gave it a Band-Aid? What if Roku and Kyoshi were right?
These are questions Aang can never voice, can he?
How could he?
Why not? Why can't he just tell his friends, hey, I'm terrified I made a mistake?
Because the world views his choice as perfect. He is the symbol of the new era of peace. He's the poster boy for this third way. If the symbol starts doubting the foundation of that peace, the whole thing trembles.
That's tragic. The praise actually isolates him. He can't admit exhaustion because everyone is clapping for how tireless. He can't show his doubt because everyone is praising his certainty.
Exactly. The air nomads taught detachment, letting go of earthly tether. But the source argues they didn't teach isolation. And Aang is isolated because he is the seal holding the pressure back. He's the cork in the bottle. How can the cork complain about the pressure?
It changes how you look at his smile in that final scene. You know, the final shot at the tea shop before the end character appears. He and Katara kiss. They look out at the sunset.
Yes, a beautiful moment.
It is, but now it's not just a smile of relief. It's a smile of resolve. Like he's bracing himself for what comes next.
It is the smile of someone who has accepted a lifetime of vigil. He's enjoying the moment of peace, but he knows the work isn't done. It has just changed form. The war is over, but his watch is just...
Let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about Aang's internal state, but what about the world he built? The source talks about redefining balance. And this is really interesting because balance is the buzzword of the whole show.
It is the thesis of the show. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, can bring balance to the world. It's in the opening narration of every episode.
Usually when we talk about balance and Avatar, we think of harmony, yin and yang, light and dark, coexisting, the koi fish, hui and la, circling each other endless in the spirit of...
Right. Everything in its place. A static state of perfection you achieve, and then it's done.
But the source argues that for Aang, balance isn't a state you achieve. It is a condition you maintain at a personal cost. It shifts the role of the Avatar from a corrective force to a stabilizer.
That distinction is vital. Corrective versus stabilizer. It's a paradigm shift for what the Avatar is.
Can you unpack that difference for us?
Certainly. Think about Kyoshi. When Chin the Conqueror wouldn't move, she used the elements to sever her peninsula from the mainland and create Kyoshi Island. She created a literal tectonic shift to correct the problem.
An extreme but permanent solution.
Exactly. When Roku fought the volcano on his home island, he was battling the elements directly to prevent a catastrophe. These are corrective forces. They reset the board. They eliminate the immediate problem.
Okay. Like hitting the reset button on a glitching computer. You force it to restart in a stable state.
But Aang didn't reset the board. He froze it. He kept Ozai alive. He kept the Fire Nation largely intact, but under new management, with Zuko. He didn't destroy the source of the imbalance. He neutralized it and put himself in charge of containing it. He is stabilizing a volatile reaction.
So instead of extinguishing the fire, he just built a really good, very secure fireplace around it.
Exactly. And fireplaces need tending. You have to clean the flue, manage the embers, make sure no sparks fly out. The Avatar becomes someone whose presence prevents collapse, rather than someone who delivers mental judgment.
That sounds temporary, or at least fragile. The piece seems incredibly fragile if it's based on that.
It is fragile, not because it is weak, but because it depends entirely on the continued presence and will of the person who made the choice. The piece is named Aang.
This makes me think about the avatars who come after Aang. I feel like this analysis explains so much of the friction and the problem in Korra.
Indeed. It's a direct through line. Future avatars, like Korra, benefit from Aang's restraint. They inherit a world that praises mercy and values all life. Republic City, this great multicultural experiment, exists because of Aang's philosophy. That is a good thing. A wonderful thing.
There's a but.
But they also inherit the structure of that piece. They grow up inside the out, not the uncertain. Korra lives in a world built on Aang's mercy, but she has to deal with the villains who arise precisely because that mercy left cracks in the foundation. Aemon, the Equalists, the Red Lotus, they all exploit a world that isn't as black and white as it was in Aang's.
She didn't have to stand on that rock and almost kill the Fire Lord. She didn't feel the heat of the comet. She wasn't there.
No. Aang is unique because he alone holds the memory of what could have happened. He is the bridge between the old brutal world where 100-year wars happen and the new, more complex, peaceful world. He bears the weight of that transition alone.
It seems like Aang became irreplaceable. And in a system based on reincarnation, isn't that a bad thing? The Avatar is supposed to be a cycle. One ends, the next.
It is a paradox. The Avatar is replaceable by design. One dies, the next is born. But Aang's specific piece, this piece built on personal maintenance, relies on Aang's specific moral authority. The source suggests Aang became irreplaceable in a way an Avatar shouldn't be. He became the keystone in the art.
And if you pull him out, does the structure hold? That's the terrifying.
That is the question Korra has.
That brings us to the core thesis of the source material. Survival versus victory. Why does the source insist on the word survival? Why be so pedantic about it? It feels like splitting hairs, but it's not.
It's not at all. Because words shape how we understand story and how we understand heroism. Winning implies finality. It implies the story is over, you win the game, you go home.
Right. Trophy on the shelf, confetti falls, the credits roll. We can all feel good because the bad thing is gone.
Survival implies continuation. It implies that you made it through the fire, but you are still walking. The hardest part starts after the survival. It's about what you do the day after and the day after that.
It's the heroism of endurance.
Yes, it's a completely different model of hero. Contrast this with typical action hero. Iron Man snaps his fingers, Thanos and his army are gone, the threat is eliminated, Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star, the weapon is gone.
Boom, done. Problem solved. Clean.
Aang wins by becoming the place where the threat stopped. He didn't break the cycle of violence. The source says he interrupted it with himself.
Interrupted it with himself. That is such a powerful image. It's like he stepped into the giant grinding gears of the machine of war and stopped them with his own body. The gears are still there. They just can't turn. He's in the way.
And that is a quiet continuation rather than a victory. It is a mature conclusion. The source argues that the reason the ending endures, the reason we are still talking about it nearly 20 years later, is because it treats the audience like adults.
How so? It's a Nickelodeon show, a kid's show.
It gives us peace. We get the happy ending, the kiss, the music, but it implies the cost. It respects us enough to whisper, this wasn't free. Aang's bravery wasn't in the battle itself. Anyone can fight when the adrenaline is pumping and the fate of the world is on the line.
His bravery is in the Tuesday morning, 3 years later, when he has to sign the order for Ozai's prison rations.
Exactly. His bravery is in the slow, sustained endurance of living alongside the darkness without letting it define it. It is the bravery of waking up every day and choosing not to be Ozai, even when you have the power to be.
And choosing to keep Ozai alive, even when it would be so much easier, so much cleaner. Not.
Precise. That is survival, not victory.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to summarize what we've uncovered, because this has been heavy. It's really changed my perspective.
It has. I think, first and foremost, we have dismantled the idea of the clean victory. The finale isn't just about Aang defeating the Fire. It's about Aang accepting a lifetime of vigilance.
And we've redefined mercy. It's not soft. It's not fluffy. It's not just being nice. Mercy is a heavy, active commitment. It's a weight.
And finally, we've looked at the cost of that commitment, the moral injury, the loneliness of making a choice no one else can understand. The fact that Aang survives the war but doesn't escape its gravity. He carries the war inside him so the world doesn't have.
It really changes how I see the character. I used to see Aang as this happy-go-lucky kid who just happened to be powerful and managed to save the world with a smile. Now I see him as someone incredibly strong, but also tragically responsible.
He is a figure of immense moral endurance. That's the real source of his power, more than bending all four.
That's a term we should all probably think about more. Moral endurance. Doing the right thing when it effectively makes your life harder, not when the right choice is the heaviest.
And that's the connection to us, isn't it? In the real world, resolution often leaves scarred. We rarely get clean break. Goodness is not weightless. We have to carry our choice. Aang teaches us that carrying that weight is what makes a hero, not just the ability to throw rocks and fire.
Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to chew. Something the source alluded to but didn't explicitly answer. A real chilling question.
What is that?
If Aang's peace relies on him being the living boundary for violence, if he's the only thing holding the dam back, what happens to the definition of peace when is finally gone? Does mercy eventually require someone else?
A chilling thought. Can a peace built on one man's personal restraint outlive the man? Or does the debt eventually come?
Exact. Something to think about next time you watch the show. Go rewatch that finale, but this time, when the cheering starts, look at Aang's eyes. See if you can spot the weight.
It adds a whole new layer to a master.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.